Hello, welcome to TechWebDots. Today I am going to discuss Docker architecture, and this session is part of the Docker for Beginner series, so I strongly recommend you to watch the previously recorded sessions, and link is given in the description of this videos. So when we think about the Docker architecture, right, I hope you have seen the previous videos. So the Docker platform consists of several components that we use to build, run, and manage our containerized application. So in this image, you can see this is the standard one provided by Docker officially. It talks about three important pillars. The first pillar says the client from which you can interact with the Docker host, and Docker host is nothing that contains the Docker daemon, which actually maintains all the operation, and it interacts with the images internally that you have pulled from the registries or the official registries, and internally it creates the container on the basis of the images that you provided, right? And on the left hand side, if I explain, you can see three things. Docker run, that we already know, it is used to create the container and run the container. Docker build, to create the image, so that also handles by the Docker host. And Docker pull command, which is used to pull the image directly from the registry, right? And you can see there are several extension as well. Those are available or plugins which we can easily get from the registry in the Docker host. But Docker daemon is taking care of next thing. It is managing the images, and then those images are used for creating the containers. So this is the one diagram on the Docker architecture. There is another one which is provided by Microsoft. So things are same, but it is just way of representation how we see it, right? On the left hand side, we see Docker Hub, where we have the official images. Either those are based on Nginx, Windows, or Ubuntu Linux, right? And those are actually getting fetched from the Docker server, or you can say your Docker daemon. Again, it is part of Docker host, right? So required images will be fetched, and these images, either it is Ubuntu, Windows, or Nginx, those will be used to create the containers. It will depend upon how many run commands you fire up, and on the basis of that, container will be created. And you see how Docker server is running. It actually starts from Docker client. Client is nothing, the Docker command that we used, and it uses the Docker server to perform the action through REST APIs, right? So this is the important part. So in the second screen where we see the arrow, so those are part of our interaction that we are doing with the REST API, right? In the next section where we have the Docker engine, right? So let's read the important details of each and every section. So Docker engine consists of several components configured as client server implementation, where the client and server run simultaneously on the same host. Means the moment you install the Docker, so server and client both are installed. So the Docker client or desktop communicate with the server using a REST API, yes, we have seen in the diagram, which enables the client to also communicate with a remote server instance. Second, the Docker objects. There are several objects that you will create and configure to support your container deployments. This includes network, very important, storage, another important one, plugins, and other service objects. We'll talk about network and storage in our upcoming videos. We wouldn't cover all of these objects here, right? But it is good to keep in mind that these objects are items that we can create and deploy as needed. So it means we have the leverage of managing those as well from the networking and the storage point of view. Then what is the host operating system we are talking about? The host OS operating system is the operating system on which the Docker engine runs, actually the base one, and the Docker container running on the Linux and share the host kernel. We have seen previously in previous recorded sessions, and don't require a container operating system as long as binary can access the OS kernel directly. The last point in the Docker architecture, Windows containers needs a container operating system. We are talking about Windows here. The container depends on the OS kernel to manage services such as file system, network management, process scheduling, and memory management. And I think from the overall point of view, this information is enough to understand how the Docker architecture works. So I hope it is clear for you. And in the next lecture, we'll discuss the Docker Hub and the registries. So I will see you there. Till then, bye bye.